Now that you guys have finished Hot Frog, I just want to take some time to go over the text and make sure that you understand everything. So I have put my drawings in this left-hand margin and my annotations in the right, and I'm just going to talk you through them. So in this first section, we learned that the king is quite fat, and he has 7 ministers, 7 men kind of in his circle. We also learned that he likes to laugh a lot. He likes comedies, and that he has a jester or a fool. In the next part, we learn about his jester, whose name is Hot Frog. So we learn that he's a dwarf. Okay, so I tried to draw him shorter than an average person, although doesn't really look like an average person. With his jester hat, he's not a very happy. He's not a very happy person. He's actually a cripple, and he doesn't walk normally, and so that's kind of what got him the name Hot Frog, because his walk is kind of like a leap or a wriggle, it says. But he has a really strong upper body and really strong arms, and he's great at climbing because of that. So that leads us to our first element that we see, and that is nature. And this is because it doesn't say that God bestowed that onto him. It says that nature bestowed that onto him. So this is kind of linking to the idea that romantics don't believe in God. And they find their spirituality in nature instead. All right, the next character we're introduced to is Tripetta, and she's also a dwarf, but she's not quite as short as Hot Frog. She's very beautiful, and she's a dancer. She has a lot of favor with the king. The king really likes her, and so she often uses that to help Hot Frog, who the king is and is nice to. And they were both kidnapped from their countries, and they were given as gifts to the king. So I tried to draw it like them coming out of a present, although I'm sure that's not what that looks like. Art is not my calling. And I drew a heart just because I was trying to show that they're sworn friends. Then we're moving on to what the king forces Hot Frog to do. So the king forces Hot Frog to drink wine. He thinks it's really funny to see Hot Frog drunk, being a cripple and a dwarf. So I drew him with rosy cheeks and looking dizzy. And this actually makes Hot Frog cry because the king says, "Drink to your absent friends," on Hot Frog's birthday. And so it reminds him that he doesn't really have any friends, and, well, I guess besides Tripetta, but it makes him feel really sad. So that's the emotion. And in romantic texts, we see a lot more emotion than you've seen in other texts, like Enlightenment period ones. And actually, the king, he grew purple with rage, so there's another one, which is anger. Now, Tripetta steps up, and she tries to stand up for Hot Frog and basically tell the king to stop. And the king pushes her down and throws the wine in her face. So that's what I drew. And when this happens, Hot Frog lets out like a grating sound with his teeth, like almost gritting his teeth. So those are his teeth, that's the sound. And this is actually just showing that he's really angry about what the king did to Tripetta. Okay, moving on. We have Hot Frog comes up with a plan, right? Like, so this is what he's going to do to get revenge. So for what the king just did to Tripetta. So he has this idea that he needs 8 people to dress up like orangutans, and he's going to chain them up. Okay? Those are supposed to be orangutans, if you couldn't tell. And then I just did times 8 because, didn't want to do that 8 times, especially because it looks so bad. And just make sure that you stop to do the quick right. So what emotions drive Hot Frog to seek revenge, and then what do you think his revenge will be? All right, so this next section is really important. So what he does is he puts a chain around the king's waist, and then he connects that chain to the so there's the king. Okay, this is like an aerial view, so that's like the top of his head, right? So he connects that chain to his first minister, his second, his third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. So the king and all 7 of his ministers are connected with chains around their waist. And then he puts them in a circle, and then he links a chain from here to here and from here to here. Okay, and it's got like a hook in the middle. So that's super important, okay? Again, every detail that Poe puts in matters, right? Because it all like brings you to what happens at the end. So next, he goes on to describe what the room looks like, where this masquerade will take place. So masquerade is kind of like party, and people dress up, and they've got those little masks that they hold. So that's what's gonna be going on in here. Now it's a circular room, and it actually has like a skylight in the roof, but there's no like glass, right? And this was like in Shakespeare's time, like with the Globe Theater, they had open top theaters and the plays were during the day because they needed the sunlight for people to be able to see. And so this one also, though, has this chain that hangs out, and usually there's a chandelier here, which would have been all candles, right? And it's got like this rock here, so they can like move it and like raise the chandelier and lower it, like to light it, and then they'd raise it back up. So it's kind of like levels it or puts it where they want it, what level they want it at. But Hot Frog says he wants a chandelier down, and his excuse is that the wax drippings will get on people's nice clothes. Now, that's not really why he wants the chandelier down, but that's what he says. And so because they don't have the light from all the candles, he puts 50 or 60 of these like torches, like flames, around the room. Okay, so then it's the day of the masquerade, and he dresses the king and the 7 ministers all up. He basically like makes them get in like really tight like shirt and underwear, and then he covers them in tar, and then I think it says flue. And then anyway, so all the people are in this circular room, and they're having this party, and then all of a sudden the 8 chained orangutans enter, and people totally freak out because some of them think they're real and everything. They don't know they're the king and the ministers. So they're super scared, and they're running for the doors, but Hot Frog had the bright idea that all the doors would be locked so that nobody could get out, and only he has the key. So everybody is stuck inside. So we've got swooned with affright, rush was made for the doors, they're afraid. Then what he does, now my drawing is not an accurate representation. I realized, well, as I was doing it, but okay, so what he does is the king and the 7 ministers are all chained up in that circle, and when they make their way to the middle, he takes the hook that was hanging from the chandelier and the hook that was in the center of the like perpendicular chains, and he hooks it to the chandelier chain, and then he pulls it up slightly so that the king and the 7 ministers can't reach it to unhook themselves, right? And so like they're still standing on the ground and everything. I should draw on the ground there, sorry. And actually it appears that they're chained by the heads. However, they are not. They are chained by the waist. So that is an error in my drawing. I just was finding it hard to draw them chained by the waist. Okay. So then what he does is he ends up kind of like stepping up on the king and climbing. Well, first he grabs a torch, like a flame thing, and then he steps up on the king and he climbs up and he grabs a hold of this chain. And what happens is that Trapetta is actually up here on the roof, and what she probably does is gets this rock to fall off of the building, and it had to be heavier than 8-9 men. It ends up making the king and his 7 ministers and Hot Frog, who's holding on, fly up 30 feet into the air. So then I just extended this to make it look like they were super high up, right? Okay, so then what happens is Hot Frog lets out the same sound he made when the king threw the wine in the face of Trapetta and pushed her down. And so it's the same sound, and he's described as having fang-like teeth. He's grinding them and gnashing them. He's foaming at the mouth. He glares, and he has an expression of maniacal rage. He's a maniac, right? And so I put rage here. And it sounds like he's like an out-of-control animal, right? Like fangs, you think of snakes, and foaming at the mouth, you think of like an animal with like rabies, and so he just sounds like this really dangerous animal that is totally out of control, right? And so which he is. So what he does is he uses a flame that he's holding to set the king and the 7 ministers on fire, right? And they go up so quickly into flames. And why? Well, the reason is that what Hot Frog dressed them in, the tar and the flax, is highly flammable. So it's like he had put gasoline on them essentially, and so they are burning alive, and everybody at the party is just like in absolute horror at what they're seeing, right? So then we've got, when the fire goes out, we've got, just the 8 corpses there. And then Hot Frog finishes climbing up. Remember, he's really, really strong, so he's able to do that. And that was his last jest, so I had him ditch his jester hat. And he and Tripetta run off, never to be seen again. And remember, all the people, I should have drawn them, all the people are still locked inside, and they can't get out. And so to get Hot Frog, and so that's how they get away. So hopefully that video helped and give you a better understanding. And if there's any changes that you need to make, then go back and do those. And then I just want to remind you to also do the last quick write, which is an opinion question. Do you think Hot Frog's vengeance is justified? Okay, and then to explain why you think it is or why you think it's not.